Welcome back to another AP Psychology series video. This is lesson number 2, where we will take a look at the current status of psychology today, common themes among the course, and basically just kind of the general subject matter that makes up the class in terms of the subfields of psychology and research areas, etc. So basically today, looking at the more contemporary version of psychology, in the last lesson we focused on kind of the early fields of psychology and where it all evolved, but now we're going to take a look at exactly what makes up contemporary psychology. Psychology today, as you can see, is the second most popular undergraduate degree, following right behind business administration and management. And so a lot of students are going to college every year and majoring in psychology. Maybe they are not really sure exactly what they want to do and psychology appeals to them. Obviously it's a very popular undergrad degree, so it is a fairly interesting subject, which hopefully you'll learn over this class, but it seems to be a really common major at the university level. Despite the fact that it is such a common undergrad degree, or a bachelor's degree, it only makes up 10% of all doctoral degrees. It's actually a very competitive field to get into psychology in terms of anything beyond the bachelor's level degree. And so a lot of students realize that maybe it was not for them, or they aren't willing to commit to the number of years it's going to be required to go to an advanced level with a psychology degree. Generally, there are not a lot of jobs that are specifically tied to a bachelor's degree for psychology. So if this is something that is interesting you, you need to understand that most people who get an undergrad degree in psychology who are looking for a specific type of job will probably go to get a master's degree or maybe even a doctoral degree in psychology to give them some career prospects. With just a general undergrad degree, it does not really open any doors for you other than showing that you committed to a 4-year institution where nobody paid for you maybe, or nobody was telling you you had to go to class, you just went and you got your degree, etc., etc. In terms of the people who have doctoral degrees for psychology, they have a lot of options in terms of what they want to do or where they want to work. So you can see about 30% of them are involved in education, where they are working on college campuses. Maybe they are researchers, and maybe they are also professors, lecturers. So they work at the college or university level. That makes up basically about a third of them. The rest of them are all over the place. You can see in hospitals, in clinics. Some may work for the police. Some may be purely aligning themselves with doing research and that's it. They may work for the government. They may work in the schools. They may work at nursing homes, or they might open up their own private practice. So it really just depends. Basically, there are lots of fields available. You have people who work with the police for forensics. You have people who are opening up private practice to deal with mental illness. You have people who are on staff at doctors' offices and hospitals to provide kind of immediate psychological care. There's really just a whole lot of stuff. So as a whole, there are basically 9 major research areas of psychology. So these are mostly the things that are going to make up the units in this class for introductory to psychology. So we're going to take a very brief look at them. Definitely, you don't need to know every single thing about this. It's just a general overview of the research areas. But let me go ahead and show you here. So one of the more popular research areas is developmental psychology. The main focus is on human development, so the lifespan, birth to death. It devotes a lot of research to just life in general, growing up. That's what the lifespan is. So there you have it. Social psychology is also a really big research topic, so looking at social forces in governing behaviors. So how does one person impact another person? How does a group of people impact another person? There are many topics in this. There are many famous psychological experiments that are here, many of which are controversial. Educational psychology is also a pretty big research area. So for here, it is about looking towards educational methods. What are the best ways to learn? How do people learn? What are the best ways to teach people? It looks at curriculum development and teacher training programs, types of tests, motivation. I mean, there's really a whole lot of things involved with learning and educating someone. Then you have health psychology, which specifically looks at basically the causation of illnesses, prevention of those illnesses, and how those illnesses can be treated. So it's, again, something that sounds pretty common sense here. Health psychology, the focus is on health. So no need to go too deep into that. Physiological psychology, on the other hand, is maybe what you might think about with health psychology, but it is more of an impact on looking at genetic factors. So looking at heredity, genetic influence, the role of genetic factors on brain development, the nervous system, the endocrine system, chemicals in the body, and how these things all impact your behavior. Then you have experimental psychology. So one thing I tell my students is not to be confused to think that a researcher in the experimental psychology field is the only person that can conduct an experiment. So that's not actually true. This is just called experimental psychology because it encompasses a lot of things that are typically associated with experiments. That's really where the knowledge and data comes from. But it's a kind of mass conglomeration of many areas of introductory psychology all in one. So you have the parts such as sensation and perception, you have learning, you have conditioning, you have motivation, and you have emotion. So it is a little misleading, but don't think that this is the only place where experiments can be done, because they're obviously very popular in social psychology as well, and they'll be found in other areas. Cognitive psychology really looks at memory and higher order mental process tasks. So your ability to reason, your ability to think, anything that is really using cognition or the mind, that's a good way of thinking about cognitive psychology. Maybe making decisions, maybe why somebody is creative or what is creativity. That's kind of the higher mental processes that are going on here. Then you have psychometrics. This is one that is basically short version test making. So psychometrics, people who are in this field of research are basically looking at test development and test making. How are tests designed to accurately assess someone's personality or their intelligence or some other range of abilities? Personality is another research interest, so you basically want to know about the consistency of people's personality traits, the uniqueness of them, factors that are also involved in personality assessments. So many of you have probably seen on Facebook people sharing which Game of Thrones character they are or which Marvel superhero they are based on usually the Myers-Briggs personality test. So we'll be taking those in class and showing you exactly to some degree where you might fall. They have about 50% validity, so in a certain state of mind you may be the Incredible Hulk, but in another state of mind 2 weeks later you might be Spider-Man. So we'll just have to take a look and see. So the four big main areas that have been established for a while are clinical psychology, counseling psychology, school psychology, and then industrial organizational psychology. So if you're not really sure what those sound like they are or what they mean, clinical psychology is basically your person in private practice. This is the type of person that wants to deal with mental illnesses. They want to treat and diagnose usually more of the severe mental illnesses. A counseling psychologist could be a therapist who is a marriage and family specialist. They could be a child psychologist. And then you have industrial organizational psychology, or in some other countries referred to as business psychology. And this is basically your person that goes into a corporation to help them run things smoother. So they want to look at employee relationships. They want to look at job satisfaction. They want to basically work with your HR to try to make sure that relationships are solid, make sure that things are being done that are ultimately going to help the business. And then you have two new areas that are established. So that's forensic psychology. This is basically the basis for a lot of television shows, CSI, that kind of stuff. And then you have clinical neuropsychology. So this is basically looking at brain psychology and linking that with mental illness. People who have a psychiatry degree and you have people who have a psychology degree. So the biggest difference is that psychology is not a branch of medicine. Psychiatry, on the other hand, is. So if you are going to become a psychiatrist, you are actually going to go to medical school. For psychology, that's not the route that you're going to take. But psychiatry is a branch of medicine concerned with the diagnosis and treatment of psychological problems and disorder. So your psychiatrists generally do delve into the world of more severe illnesses, whereas your psychologists are going to be doing less severe things. They may do everyday type of counseling, stress counseling. They may treat less severe of the mental illnesses. And generally, psychologists are not going to prescribe medication. There is a few states in the U.S. where access to psychiatry is very limited. And so psychologists have been allowed to write prescriptions in these places purely because it is in the best interest of serving the people. And these are going to be people who would not have access for hundreds of miles maybe to a psychiatrist to receive the help that they need. So these psychologists, who are a bit more common in their areas, are able to help. And then lastly, we get to the final bit of information here, which is on the 7 themes of psychology. And basically what these 7 themes are, they represent a lot of the information, the themes, so to speak, that will show up in this curriculum over the course of this class. The first one is about empiricism. Empiricism basically means that your knowledge of something, or knowing, should be acquired through observation. So this is a very behaviorist type of idea. Basically means that, I can't learn something unless, in terms of knowledge, I can't learn something unless I can actually see it with my own eyes. So that's empiricism. You'll see that show up quite a bit. Psychology is also theoretically diverse. This means that there are some things that have multiple theories. Take dreaming, for example. So it's falls under the unit of states of consciousness in this class. Dreaming is a very interesting subject among students, and it is a very interesting subject among psychologists, but it is more of a minor role player in our curriculum. But that doesn't mean people don't want to know, well, why do we dream? So there are numerous theories about dreams. Some people believe that it is a way for us to solve problems that maybe we can't solve in the real world. Maybe it's a way to stuff from our daily life is going to spill over into our dreams, and we want to act out those things that may not be possible to do in the real world. Or maybe it is just a result of brainwave activity. I mean, there's tons and tons of theories about why we dream, and unfortunately, they're very hard to prove. The next one, psychology evolves in a socio-historical context. So an example of this would be looking at a world war. So World War II happens. Unfortunately, this is not a history class, so we're not going to go too much into it, but basically, you have a lot of soldiers who are returning home who are suffering from a ton of different psychologically related trauma, sometimes physically related trauma, and there are just not enough psychologists to deal with this amount of veterans. And so how psychology evolves in this socio-historical context is that group therapy emerges. Suddenly we have all these patients, we have all these clients who may need help, and there's so much demand and not enough supply. And so group therapy emerges, psychology adapts, it evolves out of this context, and we treat lots of people through group therapy. Number 4, behavior is determined by multiple causes. This is also referenced as the multifactorial causation of behavior. What this basically means is that your behavior may be caused by a number of different things. So if I look around the room right now and I see someone that may or may not have their head down, I might say that them putting their head down is a result of many different things. So it could be that they stayed up the entire night before. It could be that they didn't get a cup of coffee this morning. Maybe they had to work double shift the previous day. Maybe they are just a sleepy person. Maybe they have narcolepsy and are just going to fall asleep on me. Maybe they are, whatever. There's a lot of explanations. So your behavior could be caused by a numerous amount of things. It could even be that it's genetics and it is environment. Number 5, cultural heritage is prominent in shaping behavior. So if you think basically that your culture has not shaped who you are as a person, well, you're basically wrong. So who you are, your culture, where you're from, your family's history, your family traditions, and your family customs, the language that you speak, the food that you eat, the clothes that you wear, all of these things are going to be prominent in shaping your behavior. Number 6, the often most posed question in psychology, one of the big ones for sure, is the nature versus nurture debate. Number 6, the theme specifically focuses on heredity and environment jointly influencing your behavior. So this is a accepted statement among many in the psychology field. You can be both impacted by the environment and you can be impacted by your genetics. So that's what this one is referring to. And then last one, which is number 7, people experience the world in a highly subjective manner, or people's experiences of the world are highly subjective, or they're different. So you may see something and someone else may see something completely different. And if you're in my class, then we will be doing an experiment on this as soon as this is over. So that pretty much concludes contemporary psychology in terms of what we're interested in covering, as well as some of the major research areas of psychologists and themes of psychology. So hopefully you have found this constructive. You may go back through it anytime and click pause to look at any more information that you might want to absorb. But that is all for now. I hope to see you again for lesson 3.